News updates and more on this episode of End the Weekend. Hi, I'm Andrew,
Hey, I'm Shane.
and welcome to another episode of End the Weekend.
Oh, it's been a little while. It's a little bit
Yeah,
chilly,
it
but
has been cold. We've had a bit of wet weather. We've had floods once again. It's been a pretty miserable last month.
we're back, and there's a lot of new EV news to go through.
Exactly. Shane, did you want to do a quick follow up on from the last episode around range anxiety?
Yeah, so last episode we're talking about range anxiety, and I forgot a story I probably should have shared, but we were in Gold Coast. We just finished at Movie World for the day, and we were topping up at a non-Tesla charging bay, getting ready for the next leg of our road trip that we were doing. We were heading into Mount Tambourine, which is sort of like a mountainy area, about 30, 40 minutes from Gold Coast. Really nice part of the world. But yeah, we were there. It was a 50 kilowatt charger. I think it was an EV branded one, maybe. And we were sitting there. We'd got to about 98, 97%. I normally wouldn't charge that high, but I figured the charging infrastructure wouldn't be that good in the mountain area. So I thought we'll go to 100 just to give ourselves enough to see the 2 or 3 days that we're going to be there.
Yeah.
And then getting ready to leave, and this dude rocks up in a Model X, pulls in really, really quick, and gets out of his car really quick, comes and knocks on the window. He goes, "Hey, mate, you're nearly done?" I'm like, yeah, we're just on the way out. And he goes, "Oh, good. I'm on 0%. And I've just gone,
Way,
0%.
way to cut it close, hey?
So I can imagine that guy was going through a bit of range anxiety. I
Just
know
like,
you get a little bit of extra range when you hit 0%, but like we're probably talking like what, 20 to 40 Ks
yeah, it wouldn't be
max.
much.
So I imagine he was probably pretty panicky, but apparently he had visited two other non-Tesla charging stations, and they were both out of action. And he was just lucky. The one we
Oh,
were at, there was two bays. One of the bays was out of action, and the one I was freeing up, he was able to jump in next. But yeah, so not to panic people, but range anxiety can happen, and he's just lucky that he was able to get there and avoid a tow truck, I think.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's one thing I think everyone's concerned of, and when I see things on the Facebook and all of that, that's the one thing they always seem to make fun of. But I think again, I think this is where your better trip planner and those things we spoke about in the other week's episode can really come in handy. Hey,
Yeah. Trip
yeah.
planner and plug share. A better route planner and plug share. I think two main apps, and should help you avoid it. And it's just going to get a bit better as we get more charges, which I think we'll touch on a bit later on.
Yeah, that's right. So one of the biggest updates we've had in the last couple of weeks is the batch of Model Ys and Model 3s seem to be heading towards Australia. So as we've all spoken about before, I've got my Model Y on order, and I got a update the other week. And what this means for me is now I have a set delivery date. So now I'm expecting to take delivery between 8th of August and 22nd of August. So it's a pretty big range. But yeah, I'm looking at the date right now, and that's just around the corner. It won't be long.
Is it starting to feel real
It's
yet?
starting to feel a bit real. But yeah, there was a couple of touch and go moments with finance. So I'll just share a quick story around finance. I'm a contractor. I'm not, I guess, a full-time employee as most people are. And I had applied for finance with Pepper, and Pepper had turned around and said, you're a contractor, you need to be working there for X amount of time. And I'm like, yeah, I have been. And they just turned around out of the blue and said, no, we're not going to give you finance. So I went to panic stations thinking, shit, how am I going to pay for this car? How am I going to get this over the line? And it was really bad because, I mean, I applied for their finance almost 4 or 5 weeks ago. And only now that I've got a delivery date, I'm trying to chase it up saying, what's going on. And for them to tell me no. And look, I understand it's probably not a use case for everyone, but basically, long story short, the company I contract with changed their contracting agencies. So it looked like I started a new job. And even though with all the proof and everything that I could give them, they just weren't interested in giving me finance. So I moved over and applied through Plenty, and within 2 days, I had a yes. So it's incredible the difference I had between companies when it came to finance. But yeah, they were much better to deal with plenty. So if you are looking at financing your next Tesla, I would highly recommend going with Plenty. Customer service was more than better. They had a Tesla dedicated team as well, so they knew exactly what to do. I can see now as well in my Tesla account, I can see the order has progressed, and it says it's basically pending delivery now. So yeah, exciting. It's starting to feel a bit more real now. I'm starting to see, everything being completed in my Tesla account. So
That's excellent, man. That's great. And I think probably shows that it does pay to shop around. I think with finance, you probably have to be a bit careful that you're not sort of seeing like from your credit history and things to be applying too much. But if you
yeah,
get the
obviously not
runaround,
credit advice as everyone does in these disclaimers, but that's just my personal experience when it came to what happened with me.
and I
But
think
yeah,
no one minds the finance companies, I guess, doing due diligence. But sort of when you had been at that same employer for 4 or 5 years and it was just like a bit of red tape that they had changed the, I guess, the payment company that it went through, really, not your employer. But anyway, done now.
yeah,
So
it's
now
done,
you,
it's sorted. So hopefully, fingers crossed, in a couple of weeks, we might be doing an episode on my Model Y.
yeah, can't wait. Have you started ordering any accessories yet?
I've been looking. I've definitely been looking. For the Model Y right-hand drive, there doesn't seem to be a lot available at the moment, which is a little bit disappointing. I've gone through the Amazons. I've even checked in. So, as you may or may not know, I subscribe to the Vita Prime membership just to see what's going on in there. They have a Discord server where people are basically discussing everything from I'm VINless to when my model's getting shipped to accessories, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, there seems to be a lot of companies in China that are making the I just want, for now, all I want is the roof liner that you can get for the sunroof because it's a large sunroof. And I imagine in summer that's going to be pretty tough here. So I'd like to get that, and I'd like to get mats and floor mats. There's plenty online for the left-hand drive models, but I've been struggling to find something right-hand drive. So touch wood, I'll find something soon, but it doesn't seem to be too much for the right-hand drive market at this stage. So,
Yeah, it might take a little bit for the manufacturers to get there, but given the popularity for the Model Y in Australia and I imagine other right-hand drive markets, I think you'll be able to pick up some new toys for it pretty soon once it lands for you.
yeah, exactly. So where are these ships? So we know it's like I said in my article that I wrote on intheweekend.com. I can't share specifics about the ship. I do know what ship my car is on, but it is currently up near Papua New Guinea at the moment, so it's not far. Apparently, its next stop is going to be docking in Queensland, so it's going to dock somewhere in Queensland. Now, whether that means my car gets unloaded there, or if they just stop there, unload some cars, and go further down, don't know yet. It may end up unloading. What's the place in the port near Wollongong? Can't think of the name of it right now. But yeah, it looks like the Sydney orders may unload there and not in Queensland. So
Yeah. I've
we'll
got a
see.
hunch that I don't know if they do car unloads in Queensland. It might be other. I mean, that ship's probably doing other things as well, not just Teslas. So they might unload things there, and then whether they still ship up all the cars to Brisbane or not
Yeah,
from
exactly.
Sydney, and then it heads down to Melbourne, I think, after that.
So we'll see. Yeah, that's the bit weird. That's a bit unknown. I don't know where the car's going to end up getting unloaded, but it looks like it's only a couple of days of being off unloaded from Queensland. So I'm guessing all the Queensland orders are going to be first, and then hopefully we'll be next. Yeah, exciting times.
Oh, in a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So Shane, there was also enhanced autopilot was on the news in the last couple of weeks. Do you want to
Yeah,
talk
so
us
you
through it?
can now order that in Australia and New Zealand, which is pretty exciting. And I'm still not sure whether it's good value for money. There's a lot of mixed feelings on it, but maybe we'll go quickly over what the enhanced autopilot is. So you get a subset of the full self-driving features. So it's about a bit over $5,000, and it will let you have navigation on autopilot, auto lane change, auto park, summon, and smart summon features. So What it means you're missing out on is the traffic light and stop sign control, and the auto steer on city streets. So of the features you do get, the ones I think I'd probably like would be the auto lane change when you're on autopilot on freeway driving. Not that it's that annoying, but it would be nice to be able to just
Yeah.
indicate when you want to overtake somebody or a truck well in advance, and then have it do that. But I'm not really sold on the other bits and
Look, I
pieces.
mean, from my perspective, I agree. Look, $5,000 for, features, a lot of these features that are just standard in some cars, I think is a bit rough. I mean, look, honestly, the only thing I'd probably be interested in is probably the auto park and the summon. That's pretty much all I think I'd be interested out of those features. I think everything else, I mean, I'm happy to keep steering and keep going with. Look, I may change my mind after having the Model Y, but yeah, at this stage, yeah, I don't see any other thing that I'd be interested in other than maybe the auto park and the summon. I can see in some situations where maybe it's parking is tight, you can move the car forward. That's probably all I would be interested in personally. But yeah, are you going to buy
Yeah,
it, Shane?
nah, not yet, but I'm glad it's an option. A few people have wanted it, and it's probably a smart move from Tesla to have that as an option that people can select. And but more options are good. But yeah, I'm probably not going to fork out for that. I think I'm going to put my new toy money into the black rack.
Well, it was actually an interesting thing. I know in the States that they have a subscription model for some of these in enhanced autopilot, so you can only pay month to month. Do we know whether that's coming to Australia, or is that just a big unknown at this stage?
I think there was an Elon tweet, of which there's many, saying that they would bring it out to other markets. But yeah, I don't think we've seen any timelines or anything like that. But I'd probably spend a couple of
Yeah,
$100.
that's what I'm thinking. If I could just, I know I'm going on a big long road trip, in a month's time, I might buy the features just for the road trip and then unsubscribe when I get home. Yeah,
Maybe it'll be there for our Great Ocean Road when we get to that.
yeah, exactly. So moving on, BYD gets approval for rego in Australia. So this is a big one. So as we had an article again on endtheweekend.com, was BYD, the Chinese electric car company, which will be the cheapest electric car you can buy in Australia at the moment, has been approved to get registered. So what that means is they've gone through all the ADR rules and just made sure that the car is compliant with Australian design rules, which is what ADR is. And that means there will be weeks potentially before we start seeing the BYD Atto 3 on the street. So people have pre-ordered. More electric cars coming this way. It's all happening.
Yeah, it's good. I'm pretty pumped for BYD. They have their really good blade battery technology, which even Tesla, I think, are going to grab some of their kit. And yeah, coming in at a better price point for a lot of people, and still pretty good range on it too. So
And to touch on that blade design architecture, so what that just basically means is just think of it exactly like blades. You got a blade battery, and they're interchangeable, and they're just cells you can take in and out. It's also been proven to be much safer too, because you don't end up with potential a thermal runaway, which is when a battery essentially catches on fire and you're unable to put it out. So those all safeties comes in with that blade battery design. But yeah, interesting. And another interesting news that milestone that happened was Tesla Model S hit 1 million miles in the States. So that's quite an achievement for all the people saying that, these electric cars, they won't be able to, you're going to have to change the battery every 100,000 Ks. That's not the case. I think with this Model S, it did have a pack replacement twice that was all covered under warranty, because it was within the warranty period. But even then, considering 1 million miles, I mean, how many cars do you know that have driven 1 million miles? I'd say not many, if any.
and my math could be off, but I'm pretty sure it's about 1.6 million kilometers, right? So I think 1.6 mile to a K. So other way around. That's a lot of driving.
And you got to remember as well, these are the cars, these aren't regular driving. They were ride sharing cars in the States going from Vegas to California. So these are rideshare cars where they're basically doing that trip back and forth all day, every day. So yeah, it's a pretty incredible achievement.
Yeah, I think it bodes well. And obviously, we don't have the longevity yet of some of the other models, but there's been more advancements since that Model S came out.
And exactly, we just the Model Y and the Model 3 just hasn't been around long enough to be able to hit 1 million miles, I think is the reality at the moment. So we'll see. Time will tell. Time will tell. Shane, you want to talk us through what's happened with Ampol?
Yeah, so Ampol, one of the large petroleum companies, have opened their first EV charger in Alexandria, New South Wales, which is pretty cool. So I mean, it's good. Like, it's more chargers are good. There's a bit of an asterisk, I think, or I
They're in their
think
trial mode at the moment, aren't they? They're testing the waters with chargers at the moment, aren't they?
yeah, they've got obviously they're taking advantage of some of the government grants that are available to help, I guess, their foray into, which is totally fine. That's what the grants are there for. There's some really annoying parts about those grants where the specifications that the businesses that are opting in to use those grants need to have the CCS2 cable, which is what Tesla and all the manufacturers that are now coming out with.
The modern one,
They
yeah.
also have to have the old, how do we say it? Chadmio?
Chatamo. That's the oldest
Cables,
model.
which for the Leaf, I think is
Yes,
probably
yes.
the most common car
The
that
original Leaf.
would still be in Australia that would have it be using that. So for the two bays that will be there, or the two cars can charge at once, but in reality, there's probably not going to be many people using the Chatamo ones.
Yeah.
But Ampol are aiming to have 120 sites by the end of 2023. So even if we say that for, I guess, me and you in our Teslas, being able to use the CCS2 charging, there's going to be at least 120 new locations that are going to have them, let alone the other providers that are going to start jumping on as well. I think BP probably won't be too far off doing something similar. So
And those where it'd be really beneficial in my minds is, when you're driving on the freeways and you've got those servos that are just on either side, and there's generally a McDonald's and a servo somewhere. I think somewhere like that would be highly beneficial, and I guess you get a lot of traffic coming down those ways. So yeah, and it's free for the month of August, from what I read too.
yeah,
Um,
so I think it runs out at the end of August. So if anyone's around Alexandria and wants to check it out,
yeah, definitely. Maybe when I drive the car home, because I think I'll be picking up the car from somewhere near Alexandria. So maybe on the
yeah,
way back.
you're probably Alexandria or Chatswood, I think you'll likely end up from. So maybe we can do a swing by and check it out.
Maybe do a quick video on it too. The other, I guess, to go on that theme of charging, there's also Jolt starting to offer 7 kilowatts of free charging a day across the Jolt network. So Jolt are essentially provide charging infrastructure. They're kind of mobile charging infrastructure, and they're placed all around the city. So potentially you could be parked somewhere in a city street somewhere, and you could get 7 kilowatt hours of charging a day, which is, I guess, it's kind of like a golden time to have a electric car at the moment when you compare that to fuel at the moment.
Yeah, every time I drive past a petrol station, I'm like, oh, I don't miss filling up every week. But
Look, prices
uh,
have dropped a little bit, I can tell you, because I've filled up recently. But look, like I said, in September when that fuel excise comes back on, it's going to go straight back up.
yeah, but I think that's pretty good. So that's roughly 40 to 50 kilometers worth of driving in that 7 kilowatt free charging. And if you're calling into the shops to pick something up at a supermarket and there's a Jolt nearby, I think it's a nice little initiative.
Yeah, exactly. The other big news we saw this week was Hyundai Envision 74. So it's an electric hybrid, plug-in hybrid that Hyundai has as a concept vehicle. And it's going to be the first hybrid hydrogen. It's not going to be a hybrid fuel, petroleum. It's going to be a hybrid hydrogen. So that'll be the best of both worlds in my mind. You have the best of EV technology where you're able to plug it in and charge it, and where you want the range, you can fill up hydrogen. Look, from that perspective, hydrogen is easy to make, right? As long as you've got water and you've got electricity, you can make hydrogen. So as long as we're you're not using coal to power that energy generation, and we're using solar excess or wind excess to make that hydrogen. That's a real positive step, and I can really see something like that taking off more once the hydrogen infrastructure is set up. So that's
That's
some
pretty
interesting.
cool. I'm not anti plug-in hybrids, like using a petrol and an electric motor, but I'm more open to using hydrogen and an
Yeah,
electric
yeah, and
battery.
you know what? I've definitely been in the past when people talk about plug-in electrics. I'm kind of like, why bother? You know, in my mind, you've got the worst of both worlds. You know, you got a battery that needs to potentially be serviced, and then you have an engine that needs to be serviced, and you know, you kind of just carrying around a battery if you're using the fuel petrol, and if you're using it in the other way around if you're doing the other way. So look, I think after talking to a few friends, I think there is a good use case for hybrids. At the end of the day, there are people who live, like my brother, who lives in an apartment block, who simply don't have charging infrastructure in their basement for charging, and they're building that. He's even inquired, "Will you guys install a charger down in our basement area?" And the answer was straight up no. So there is definitely a use case, I think, for hydrogen and not hydrogen, hybrid, and plug it in where you can, and when you can't, you can still use your fuel. So I've definitely I've changed my opinion on that too.
Yeah, and I think I read an article I think you sent me from the chief scientist of Toyota, and
Yes.
obviously he might have some vested interest, but he was sort of one of the points he made was that for every battery electric vehicle, you can build 4 plug-in hybrids using the same sort of amount of material and things. So that gets more cars on the road. And if these have a range of 50 to 60 Ks, that's a lot of people's daily driving anyway. And then they can keep it for the big road trips. So they could still do most of their driving off, the city slickers and whatnot. They don't need to do those big trips and just doing the work one. They can plug it in at home every night and rarely ever use petrol. So yeah, I'll probably change my thought on it a little bit, but I still just love the simplicity of the pure battery vehicle.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess it's probably a good segue into what the ACT is doing. So that was another big news this week, was around ACT banning the use of petrol vehicles by the end of 2035. You want to take us through what that was, Shane?
Yeah, interesting. The first state or territory to do that, I guess, signaling their intent. I think well ahead of time, really in line with a lot of what the rest of the world is doing.
Yeah, and look,
So
2035 is not exactly around the corner. I mean, what's that? We're still over, what is that, almost 15 years away. I mean, I think it's a good to kind of signal the market, like this is where we're going. Get on board. Otherwise, yeah,
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 and I think if you look right now, like if we could somehow magically flick the switch tonight, yes, the charging infrastructure wouldn't be there, and there's no utes available in Australia yet. There'd be valid use cases for those passenger vehicles that we actually don't have any models for right now. But I think it's giving us enough time to get that sorted out. Those gaps are going to be plugged by the manufacturers in the next couple of years. Charging infrastructure is going to get a bit better. So yeah, I think they're pretty gutsy. There's a lot of, there's a lot of elections that'll happen between
yeah,
now and then at
that's
their
true.
local level.
Yeah,
So things could still change, but it'd be interesting to see if we get any states game enough
yeah.
to start doing something similar. We really
Look,
need we
yeah,
really need the feds to come in with some vehicle emission standards, which is probably the simplest lever they have to sort of start forcing manufacturers to bring out efficient vehicles here, because some of the manufacturers are saying, you mandate it, we'll do it. But if
if you
if
don't
they
make
have to go to Europe at the moment, and they're going to get fined if they don't supply the right amount of efficient vehicles to the Europe market and other areas, then who's going to get the stock? Not us. And
yeah.
we're just going to get all the inefficient vehicles, until someone has the guts to do it. So good on ACT.
Yeah, and I mean, I know there was a bit of negativity in the media around it, but it is a long time away, and hopefully we can get our shit sorted before then. Is my thoughts at least. As you said, Shane, everywhere else in the world is doing this. This change is coming, whether you like it or not. So you can either jump on board, or you can, sook about it and continue to drive your petrol car and inflated fuel prices.
I think like the market forces can the economics are going to do it anyway without anything, but the government can really help nudge that along in the right direction. So let's see how things play out.
Yeah. I know the Cybertruck thing, we spoke about it a couple of episodes ago about what was happening with the Cybertruck. It seems to have popped up in the news again. There was a Drive article that came out saying that, people have, they're cancelling the Cybertruck orders, and you had to apply for a refund, which seemed a bit strange to me. And then another article came out debunking that, saying, no, it hasn't been cancelled. What do you think, Shane? What do we make of this mess?
I know you and I have talked about it offline, and just that we're a bit worried about the current designs that we're seeing come through, and will they actually meet Australian standards? I don't know.
I can't see it happening, honestly. Like, unless there's some fundamental changes to the Cybertruck, I can't see it being registered on Australian roads. So,
I hope they can work through it, but I'd love to see one. Seen a tradie driving one around. I think they'd love it.
Look, the
So-
Ford. I think in that space, the Ford F-150 is doing really well. I know there's been a couple of negative articles in kind of social media, because when people have tried towing with the F-150, they get significantly less range, and this is silly. How am I going to tow my thing across the country? And having to stop every 100 miles, but it's not it's not the normal use case, I say. But look, it's a valid point. It's I think for towing for now, until something better comes out, it's still a challenge we need to try and solve. And maybe that's where these hydrogen electric things might come in handy.
Yeah, maybe hydrogen for the utes or pickups, and the bigger vehicles like buses and even planes and heavy machinery.
Yeah.
And we keep the batteries and the hybrids for light passenger vehicles.
Agreed. So the other thing that came out as well was there was, I think, the first set of Tesla Model Ys that came out with the 4680 battery cells that came out. So why is this important? Because it's a completely different battery design. I think it also means double the density when it comes to energy storage in these batteries. So it's a pretty big deal. The architecture is also now incorporates a structural design into the cars as well. So it means that the cars are more structurally rigid. I think I did see a video online somewhere as well showing them trying to tear apart one, and it doesn't look like they can tear it apart like the old model 3 and Y and S's, all those 2680 I think batteries. Those ones, they come in different packs and they're easily recyclable. So that does beg to answer the question, how does recyclability go when it comes to 4680s? Are these battery packs going to be as recyclable and as reusable as the older packs? I think it's interesting times ahead.
Yeah, we need the manufacturers to really think long term about that, and because there's a lot of those minerals and precious metals that can be repurposed, but they need to make it easy to do it, and otherwise they'll go to landfill, and there'll be a lot of valid criticism against that. So hopefully that's not the case. I don't know if you caught it, but there was also an interesting rumor with one of those Model Ys. Apparently there's a very long range Model Y based on 4680s out there that's doing, I think it's close to 1,000 Ks.
1,000 Ks, yeah, I did read that. Yeah.
I think it was 600 or 800 miles, I think. And even though Elon's come out before and said that they really don't think they need anything more than 400 miles. I thought that was interesting, but yeah, we don't know how big that battery pack that was in there. But yeah, the 4680 is pretty exciting because they're going to be make the cars lighter, more efficient, and have a bit of extra juice in them.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's exciting. It'll be interesting to see what comes of it. But yeah. And that probably is a good segue into our last news article, is around Tesla and China's largest battery company essentially teaming together to come up with a $5 billion battery plant, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of coin, isn't it? But you imagine that they're China's biggest, I think you mentioned. Yeah, that's the heavyweight EV manufacturer with one of the best or biggest battery manufacturers. Could be a good, good marriage there.
Yeah, exactly. I think we might wrap it up there. That's been a pretty big news cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just before we do, I don't know if I mentioned to you, but I saw a Kia EV6 out in the wild
Nice.
recently.
I actually saw one at work the other day too. It was in one of the charging bays. So we have a couple of charging bays at work, and yeah, they stand out in person, don't they?
Yeah, I saw mine at night, and I recognized it just from the back profile with the lights, and like I'm hitting my wife on the arm saying, "Oh, there's a Kia EV6," and she wasn't that interested, but yeah, it was pretty cool to see one out in the wild. Hopefully we'll see more and more, but obviously Kia and Hyundai are sort of struggling to get cars out here at the moment, but hopefully someone had some luck getting one of the recent Ioniq 5s that went on. I think there's another 100 yesterday or the day before that went for sale. So
Yeah.
slowly but surely we'll see more and more of them out there.
It's all happening. It's all happening. Hopefully, maybe the next episode we do, we'll do it in my Model Y.
Yeah, Model Y, looking forward to it.
All right, I'm Andrew.
I'm Shane.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Don't forget to end the weekend.